what are the attributes that are important? And over the years, I've sort of, in my own mind, distilled it down to 5 attributes that I think are important. I look for that when when we're hiring management associates or when I'm looking for people to grow in the company. I tend to look for these 5, and I've distilled it down to 5 I's. So the first I think of as individual accountability. The idea that the buck stops with you. I found in my experience in life that there are 2 kinds of people. The people who always find somebody else to point to. Circumstances, somebody had to do something didn't happen, the system didn't work. There will always be reasons for not being able to achieve stuff. And it's always very easy to, parcel and shift blame around, offer the accountability around. But I find true leaders are people who are willing to accept complete accountability for end outcomes, for results. My simple thing to people is, suppose you're setting up your own company, you're running your own business, you're an owner, entrepreneur, founder. You have nobody to blame, it's all yours. So whether you need to sweep the floor, whether you need to open the door, whether you need to get the plumbing fixed, whether you need to hire the people, whether you need to think of a market strategy, it's your business, for God's sake. So there is nobody else you can point fingers at. I think that attribute is really important irrespective of whether you're working for a large organization, small organization, or anything you do in life. One of the American presidents, might have been Truman if I remember, had this thing on his desk with saying the buck stops here. I think true leaders believe that the buck stops here. The buck stops with me. And when you do that, then you start really thinking about end outcomes. You don't think about process, you don't think about inputs, you don't think about input effort. You start looking for, did we achieve the outcome we're supposed to achieve? And if not, what can I do about it? So that's the first I, individual accountability. The second I look for in people, I think is an attribute and hallmark of leadership, is initiative. Initiative to me is the capacity to be able to set up your own agenda, to be able to look to do your own things. In large companies and organizations, it's very easy to become an inbox manager. In the old days, I used to say you go into office in the morning, you have an in tray heaped with paper. Today, you have an inbox. You turn on your email, you have 100 emails. You can build a career and do your whole life responding to people's emails. The real leaders are people who know and have the capacity to generate their own outbox, who have the capacity to say, this is the agenda that I want to set. You don't get me wrong, you obviously have to respond to people, you have to be part of a team. But finally, initiative is about establishing your own agenda. What are you going to do to leave this circumstance, this job, this situation better than what you inherited? What are you going to do to try and make a difference? And leaders have this natural bias to be agenda setters. Now, to be an agenda setter, an important attribute is you've got to be able to have opinions. And therefore, this capacity to have a point of view, the capacity to have an opinion on things, that's important, because you can never be able to set your agenda if you don't have a point of view. And so developing points of view are very important in leadership situations and leadership roles, because that allows you to demonstrate initiative and set up your own agenda. So that's the second I, that's initiative. The third I for me is innovation. And when I think of innovation, I'm not thinking of inventing the next iPhone or the iPad. Innovation is the mindset of questioning the status quo. Innovation is the mindset of always saying, why is this done the way it is? How could we do it differently? Certainly in my discipline in banking, frankly, any large organizational structures and jobs, organizations have been set up, policies and processes have been set up, but they were set up at a point in time for a particular purpose. 10, 15, 20 years later, the world has changed, ideas have changed, technology has changed, but the policies and processes are still, bound down in history. So being willing to rethink that, why are we doing this? What is the underlying principle? Could it be done differently? And how would you drive a change in the way things are done? That's innovation. So to me, leaders are constantly curious. They're constantly asking the question, why and why not? And when you ask the question, the why and why not, then you strive to think of new ways of doing things. So that's the third leadership attribute. The fourth I think of as inspiration, inspiring people. In fact, some people call it the first I leadership. How do you take people along with you? How do you take people to a destination? And sometimes not just to a destination that don't even know they exist. And sometimes to a destination they don't even know they want to go to. How do you capture and create the cohesion and the energy around teams of people to get there? And by the way, this is not just about people who are junior to you or work for you. This is about how do you carry a group of peers along with you. And frankly, it's even more than that. How do you carry a group of supervisors and seniors along with you? In my job, one of the biggest things I have to do is, bring the board along. Finally, management doesn't run companies, boards run companies. But at the end of the day, my job as a CEO is to take the board along with me, which means I've got to inspire the board to buy into my vision and to buy into my agenda. Now, working with different sets of people and getting them to buy in and inspire them, that's not easy. There are two things that work particularly well. One is communication skills. So that's one thing I just cannot overstress. Communication skills are really important. Speaking skills, writing skills, the capacity to be able to talk in front of large audiences, the capacity to be able to talk in terms of small groups of people, different stakeholders, outside in, those are really important attributes. And I would really encourage everybody, improve communication skills come through practice. Yeah, it can be achieved even if you're a shy speaker, you're not the same, it doesn't matter. If you're not a good writer, it doesn't matter. The more you practice, the better you get. And I've learned that over time. So communication skills are important. The other way you inspire people and take people along is empathy. And that's a particularly important trait. It's not that well understood and not that well focused on. But to me, this idea of being willing to put yourself in somebody's shoes is really important. If you can put yourself in the shoes of somebody else, of another person, and you relate to why they do what they do, what is their mind frame, what is the circumstance, you always find better ways to inspire them to an agenda that you want to take them to. So empathy is really important in being able to drive this whole sense of inspiration as well. So, but inspiration, that's the fourth eye. And to me, the fifth eye is intent. And so intent is really about being authentic. Having an authentic agenda and authentic purpose. I believe that for leaders, this authenticity is important because otherwise, sooner or later, people see through your charades. It's quite easy to paint a picture and you can get away with it for a point in time. But beyond a point in time, particularly people interact with you often, they see through that. And therefore, intent and authenticity, the reality of yourself, becomes quite important. I believe leaders need to be authentic. They need to be willing to be able to show themselves. They need to be vulnerable. They need to be honest about their agenda. So integrity is a big part of this intent. So integrity and authenticity are really big parts of having the right intent. Now, like I said, if you talk to 10 people, they'll come up with different pieces. A lot of it will be similar. There might be a couple of things which are different. But I really look for these attributes in leaders. I'll just end with a different dimension though. As the world is changing and becoming more and more, your VUCA world, right? So volatile, uncertain, etc. It's become more and more apparent to me that you do need to make sure that you are lateral and horizontal in the way of thinking. Your capacity to connect the dots, your capacity to be adaptable to change, your capacity to be nimble and pivot. These become quite important. But this is not just about leadership. This is true for most people and individuals. I think, if you ask me what people really need to focus on, it is the lateral connectivity skills that are really important. Leaders need to have them as much as anybody else does.